Good evening to all. Actually, we had a network problem, and that is why we could not get connected. I feel very privileged to be invited to talk on the topic language through literature. When I was invited, I actually found the topic very relevant because uh, being a teacher of literature, we find it a challenge to develop the language skills among the students to make the students understand and comprehend the beauty of language. So, I have chosen this topic, although my focus will not be on the skills because I am not a bake trainer, and a bake trainer or an ELT expert can do on that topic better than me. But I will be talking on how literature can help in developing language and how literature can be an effective medium of developing language among the students. The objectives of my study, my lecture actually, the objectives of my lecture are to help the students comprehend and understand the beauty of literary language, to help the students develop language through literature, to help the students develop their creative faculty, to creative skills, and finally to focus on the pedagogical aspect of language through literature. Now, language, when we talk about language, when definitely language, what comes to our mind, the language varieties, the origin of language, what are the features of language? Language essentially is a medium of communication. It is actually common. Everybody knows about it. And when we connect language to our human society, then we have to know about there is a particular branch of study called linguistics. And linguistics actually the technically it is the scientific study of language. Now, why language? Why the study of language is important? Why language is important? C.L. Barber actually has made a beautiful comment in his book, The Story of Language. According to Barber, it is, I quote, it is the language that distinguishes man from the rest of the animal world. So, here we have to understand that a human communication is something different from the animal communication. And it is the human language, specifically the human language, that makes the human different from the rest of the animals. Language is something which is spoken. Written language is something secondary, which comes later. It is the derivative form of the oral language. Written language, therefore, is a script. It is the visual or graphic representation of the oral speech. And as all of you know, that no human community can exist without a spoken language. So first we have to there is spoken language, that is the orality of the language, oral language. Then we comes the written language. Now we come to the definition. There are different definitions, numerous hundreds of definitions of English language. I'm not coming to all the definition, but I will be picking up two important definition of English language. According to the Collins English Language Dictionary, language is a system of communication which consists of a set of sound and written symbol which are used by the people of a particular country or region for talking or writing. On the other hand, Noam Chomsky defines language as it is something and it is an innate ability, a particular feature which is inherent in human nature. So, from the comment of Noam Chomsky, we can obviously understand that human language is something very common. It is an already inherent in human nature. It is an innate quality, innate ability of the human nature. Are we humans only using the language? That question comes to everyone's mind. No, animals also use language. They use different sound for communication. But what makes human language different from animal language is the multiplicity of meaning and open-endedness, which is the creative use of language. See, the multiplicity of meaning and open-endedness makes human language unique and particular, and this is actually why human language is different from the animal language. In this context, I want to refer to one Bengali proverb, Kotha Soto Dharay Boy. That means language is open to multiple interpretations. There is another feature that makes a human language different from the animal language, which is the semantic significance with regard to the articulation, which is unique to human language. For example, I will go to Delhi tomorrow. Here, the focus is on Delhi. When I give the emphasis on Delhi, then we mean that I will go to only Delhi. I am not going to Mumbai or I am not going to Kolkata. When the emphasis is given on I, then I will go to Delhi tomorrow. I will go to Delhi tomorrow. Then probably I mean that only I am going. No one else is going to Delhi. Not my brother or not my sister. It is only me who is going to Delhi tomorrow. It is only I who is going to Delhi tomorrow. Then, when I say I will go to Delhi tomorrow, that means only tomorrow only I am going to Delhi. Today I am not going, or day after tomorrow only I am not going. This particular features cannot be found in animal language. Now, since my topic is actually the language through literature, obviously, I will be talking about the interconnectedness of language and literature, or language and literature interface. Language can be used as an expression of national or local identity, and every literary writer tries to capture different varieties of linguistic dialect and present them in such a refined manner that the characters appear very real to the readers. For example, when you read the novels of Thomas Hardy, then Hardy's imaginary land, that is the Wessex, this particular dialect which is found in Wessex has been captured by Hardy in his novels like Far from the Madding Crowd or The Return of the Native. Then William Faulkner has captured the dialect of a particular place, Mississippi, a particular county near Mississippi in America, which is called Yoknapatawpha County. Patrick White, on the other hand, has captured the dialect of Sassafarila in his novels. Now, when we are talking about this dialect and language, how dialect is made into a language, how the literary writer refines and filters the dialect to make it a refined language, we can obviously refer to the name of Geoffrey Chaucer. It is Chaucer who wrote in the Midland dialect, I quote, who Chaucer who wrote in the Midland dialect with an ease, a polish, and a regularity which commanded immediate and unanimous admiration. And therefore, in Chaucer, we find the seed of standard English language. Probably because Lawes acknowledged Chaucer's contribution when he made the remark, he found English a dialect and left it a language. This is very important, a comment made by Lewis about Chaucer. He found English a dialect and left it a language. And as I told you before, one aspect of language is dialect, and a regional dialect is a distinct form of a language spoken in a certain geographical area. I just give the example. The dialect of West Bengal is different from the dialect of Bangladesh, although the mother language is Bengali. When the famous Bengali writer Manik Bandyopadhyay, who was born in Bihar and died in Kolkata and probably never visited Bangladesh, wrote the novel Padma Nodir Maji, or The Boatman of River Padma, which is about the lives of the fishermen of Bangladesh. He used, he exploited Bangladeshi dialect so beautifully that the characters appeared to be very real, very realistic. And this is actually the excellency of a literary writer. This is the caliber of a writer, that writer captures a dialect and presents as according to his context. So language, the literary language, which I will be talking later in my speech, later of my speech, the literary language is context bound. It is actually dependent on the context. And only a writer knows when to use a particular dialect to present and to make the characters, to make the novel appear very real, or to make it appear realistic. Now, not only geographical regions, but social class also defines a class, and it also defines the dialect, it defines the accent, and it is in this context we can refer to a one term called sociolect or social dialect, which is a form of language spoken by the members of a certain class. Again, I give the example from literature. In Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, Eliza is a simple Cockney speaking flower girl whose pronunciation lacks the sophistication found in the articulation of upper class women. And Professor Higgins, an expert phonetician, takes up the challenge of an eminent linguist, Colonel Pickering, and undertakes to transform Eliza from, I quote, draggle tailed guttersnipe into a duchess simply by correcting and improving her accent. So, in the context of Pygmalion, Eliza could be upgraded socially only if she could improve her accent. So, here, language, here is an agent of language, is acting as an agent of social determiner, determiner of the social status, determiner of a particular class. If you want to upgrade yourself to a higher class, you have to improve your accent, improve your English. In this context, I quote Linda Mugglestone: the role of accent with regard to Eliza is a determiner, I quote, not only of social status but of social acceptability. Again, Bernard Shaw has beautifully captured this particular Cockney dialect in his another play called Major Barbara. A Cockney speaker uses double negative as For example, I don't see nothing. That is nothing. Or I don't see anything. And this Cockney dialect is captured by Bernard Shaw through the character Snobby Price. And whenever Snobby Price is speaking something, he is dropping the sound H. For example, happiness for happiness and hospital for hospital. Let me quote one dialogue from Major Barbara. No good Jarwin about it. You are only a jump up, jerked off, hospital turned out incurable of an old working man. Who cares about you? Now, if we translate this Cockney dialect into standard English, then we can find no more talking about it. You are only a jump up, jerked off, hospital turned out incurable of an old working man. Who cares about you? After talking about all this about this different dialectical varieties of language, the how accent play a role in determining the social class, let me come to the most important part of my lecture, that is the difference between plain or ordinary language and literary language. There is a difference between plain language and figurative language. Figurative language is mostly used in literature, but it can be used in colloquial speech also. Plain language is something very clear, something very concise, well organized, and it is unmarked by stylistic sophistication. Plain language actually is something, the language which actually doesn't have too much of vocabulary, too much of jargon, and it focuses on, let me quote, the writing of a text that is simple, concise, and comprehensive, and directly communicate and affect the mind of the readers. Figurative language, on the other hand, uses figures of speech to make the writing appear more effective, persuasive, and impactful. Figures of speech like metaphor, metonymy, and conceit go beyond the literal meaning of the words and appeal to the senses and emotion of the readers. It is often, as whenever we are talking about this particular ordinary language and literary language, it is often alleged that the use of rhetorical devices like metaphor, metonymy, and all that to make the language, make the speech appear very artificial. No, this particular allegation is not true to the literary language. While plain language is used for technical communication, where there is no rhetorical embellishment, figurative language is a vehicle for literary communication. Figurative language is a useful way of conveying an idea or concept that the readers cannot understand or comprehend due to the complex and abstract nature of the language. A writer employs different figures of speech like metaphor, metonymy, simile to convey the emotion and feeling and to concretize the abstractness of the plain language. So, this particular line is very important, that literary language, the the main purpose of literary language is to concretize the abstract idea to concretize the abstractness of the plain language or the common language. For example, when I say she is beautiful, obviously it is a very something very common. She is beautiful. It's very something there no something there no unique in the particular expression. She is beautiful. Plain. It's an example of plain language. Now, the moment we say she is rose, so obviously I'm attributing a quality, the quality of beauty to her, to that particular girl, that her beauty can be compared with the beauty of a rose, which is an example of metaphor. So the first one, that is she is beautiful, is an example of plain language. She is rose. The second one is an example of literary language. The difference between literary language and plain language is that literal language or the plain language is something, the language which is not having any figures of speech, and it can be decoded with the help of a dictionary, while figurative language involve figures of speech, and it must be contextualized in order to understand the meaning. In my previous slide, I mentioned that literary language cannot be understood if we do not contextualize, if we do not read it in a proper context. So, contextualizing the literary language is the most important thing to understand the literary language. For example, there is a lot of snow in the calm forest. It is an example of very plain language. Now, grammatically, it is correct. Syntactically, semantically, everything is correct here. There is a lot of snow in the calm forest. Now, the moment I use the expression, the sleeping forest is covered by blanket of snow, immediately the reader, it appeals to the emotion of the reader. The reader can understand, can comprehend the beauty of the sleeping, that is the beauty of the forest, because it's a very what you call it as a very plain, very ordinary expression. There is a lot of snow in the calm forest. It's a very ordinary, it's a very plain expression. But whenever I am telling the sleeping forest is covered by blanket of snow, it becomes an example of literary expression, and the meaning remains the same, but the expression becomes different. Literary language is actually emotive language. Literary language, literary communication is emotive. It is different from scientific communication, and in scientific communication, whenever we are passing the message from one so to another, then usually there is no distortion. So passing of the message without distortion is preferred. For example, it is very hot today. So the temperature is hot, the climate is hot, it is understood. But whenever I am telling it is so hot that you could fry an egg, it becomes an example of literary language. And it is so hot that you could fry an egg, then you can imagine that, oh, that I am associating the process of making an omelette. That is, whenever we are making an omelette, usually that particular pan is very hot. The pan is very, we are frying the egg. So here also the climate is so hot that we can, it's very hot. So it is very hot today. It is an example of plain language. It is so hot that you could fry an egg. It is an example of literary language. Literary expression depend on emotional vocabulary, and usage of language is most important. And that is why I particularly will suggest all the students of language and literature alike to have a dictionary of usage, because usage is very important to learn the language. For example, slim, slender, bony, lanky, skinny, anorexic all refer to the degree of thinness of appearance. But to use them in proper context, one should have great command over usage, which most of the non-native speakers don't have actually. Most of the non-native speakers don't have, sorry, there should be a correction, which most of the non-native speakers don't have, and it is literature that helps in developing this particular usage, this idea of usage. Another example can be given: pretty, graceful, beautiful, grand, sublime. All these five words refer to the degrees of beauty, but they are context bound, which can only be conveyed by literary expressions. Another um, difference between plain language and the ordinary language is the banality. That is, literary language helps in escaping from banality, and thus, literary language is something very creative. Banality has a negative connotation of being something ordinary or commonplace. Our everyday use of commonplace language sometimes becomes very trivial, commonplace, as we tend to use the same vocabulary. For example, um, I come to college at 10 a.m. I will go to my home tomorrow. I will be going to watch a movie tomorrow. I have three close friends. My mom prepares very good dosa. I am very fond of idli. So these are actually very um, common, very trivial expression. But it is literature that makes an attempt to be free from this banality by using the creative expression. For example, I have taken four lines from the poem The Daffodils by William Wordsworth. And the last four line, actually the meaning is same, but the words have been changed. Now you can look into that particular lines and can understand the difference between the common language and the literary language, and you can understand the beauty of the literary language. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a host of golden daffodils. Now, this is a literary, this is a poetic language. Now, when I am reproducing the same lines by changing some of the words, just you look at my line. I roamed lonely as a kite that float on high over meadows and peak, when all at once I observed a crowd, a host of sweety roses. Now, when you are looking at both the expression, that is, the lines in green and the lines in blue, you can immediately understand how literary language is actually different from the plain language, and how literary language helps the student to become creative, how literary language helps to escape from the banality of expression. Now, the last point which I will be mentioning for my lecture is that how literature helps in developing language. One of the technique which literature uh, uses, literary expression or literary language uses, is foregrounding. Literature or literary language is having precise nuances of words. It is having the mnemonic quality of word. I'll be coming to that in the later part of my lecture. Now, what is foregrounding? Foregrounding use of language actually helps, or it is a departure from cliche expression. That an example like ever during, for suffered, all these are used by T.S. Eliot. Once below a time by Dylan Thomas, many a grip ago. We can say like many a time ago, but here Dylan Thomas is writing many a grip ago. So this is an example of uh, foregrounding. Now, in which way literature or how uh, language can be developed through literature? In infant level, our focus will be on rhyme. So when we are child, when we are infant, when we are teaching literature to them, we'll be mostly focusing on the rhyme. For example, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. So here it is a like a rhyme. Then when you are moving to when you are advancing to the school level, then we'll be focusing on the meaning of the language. Then when we are little more advanced, then we'll be focusing on the nuance. Then we are more advanced, then we'll be focusing on the creative aspect of the language. In all these cases, literature plays an important role. Now I'll be giving another example, like how literature helps in developing the vocabulary or helps in understanding the language. For example, William Wordsworth's poem The Solitary Reaper, there is a line, behold her, single in the field, yon solitary highland lass. Now, when we are talking about the word solitary, definitely solitary, lonely, and alone. All these three words convey the same meaning. That is, someone is alone, someone is lonely. Now, it is um, literature that actually helps you think that what is the meaning of solitary. Solitary means the girl is standing there, somebody is there around her, but she is oblivious or she's not caring about her surrounding. Lonely and alone, on the other hand, convey the same different meaning. I'll be telling you. Whenever we are talking about alone, then it is like the loneliness is justified. That is, um, I am with company, but actually I don't want to. Actually, I'm not liking the company. I am with company, but I don't like the company. Lonely means actually I am not having any company. So these three words, solitary, lonely, and alone, all these actually helps in understanding or comprehending the different meaning of the language. The object of language teaching, therefore, is to make the learners comprehend what is abstract, and it is image that concretizes the abstract what we find in literature. And finally, literary language is endowed with certain properties which are not available in non literary domains of language. And literary language tries to break the boundary of convention, and our mind is arrested to that particular convention. Now, before I move to that slide, sorry, before I move to that slide, let me just tell you some of the thing, like some of the observations, some of the point uh, with regard to the language through literature. Whenever we are talking about the language through literature, the choice or choosing the literary text is more appropriate. The choosing of the literary text, the effective choice of literary text is very important. And the choice of the literary text should be according to the background of the learners. For example, for infant level, we cannot choose Shakespeare, and for PG level, we cannot choose Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So, the background, according to the background, as per the background of the learners, we can choose the literary text. In classroom teaching, when you are teaching language through literature in class, uh, literature, the literary text should be made available in precise and abridged form. Precise and abridged form. For example, um, Shakespeare is many of the Shakespearean works has been abridged, retold by Charles and Mary Lamb by uh, in their book Tales from Shakespeare. So whenever you are recommending Shakespeare, instead of recommending any Shakespearean play or a tragedy or comedy, we can actually recommend the abridged form of the literary text, which actually help them to understand the beauty of Shakespearean vocabulary, to make them understand the beauty of Shakespearean language. So we can recommend the abridged version of the literary text. And we can, on the other hand, um, find that poetry, in my observation, can be used as an uh, effective tool for uh, developing language, because it is in poetry that we can find the experimentation with a language. That is, language is exploited by the writers, by the poet. Language is not only in poetry, even almost in all the literature, but the what is unique about poetry is that it consists of rhyme, it has the sound quality, it has the rhythm. So all these actually help in grasping the beauty of literature more effectively than compared to the other literary texts, other literary genres like novel or drama or short story and all that. Finally, which what I feel that literary texts can be used for developing language for another reason, that literary texts are universal. Whatever we found in literary text, they are very serious. That is triviality. Triviality. Triviality is avoided in literary text, and literary is having the particular appeal to the emotion and the to the readers. So this is actually for that's all for my lecture. Now there are a couple of books. There are some four books which I particularly find the students can deep delve into these particular books. These are the suggestions for further reading. R.N. Bose and Sterling, Element of English Rhetoric and Prosody. Then Sukriti Ghoshal and Suman Naik edited Advanced English L1 Handbook. Otto Jesperson, Growth and Structure of English Language. And Jeffrey Leach, Linguistic Guide to English Poetry. Uh, Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your crystal clear explanation. Everybody missed this beautiful session in the noon, but by God's grace, now you can able to give your explanation in the live session.
Thank
There
you,
is
ma'am.
a proverb, every ending has a good solution. Like our today's presenter, Dr. Goshal sir, has taken more effort. So without thanking him, this session will not be end. I wholeheartedly thankful to our today's presenter, Dr. Goshal sir, for his effort towards today. His own ideas and elegant explanation is clearly explained and given more importance about the languages, how the language takes an important role in our life. Due to poor network, our presenter faced many problems in streaming a session. Totally, it got collapsed due to environmental changes. We, the human beings and the participant, can understand the situation. So we wholeheartedly ask apology to you because I know that all the participants are very eagerly waited for Goshal sir session. Unfortunately, and it is an unexpected situation, we did not think that this situation will happen today. So, due to our participants' request, our today's speaker, Goshal sir, has given a beautiful session that you can view in YouTube live session. I hope every participant can gain knowledge about this session. So, dear participants, for your kind information, this session feedback link will be posted in the description box, and the feedback link long last up to tomorrow morning 9 a.m. I once again thank our today's presenter who have taken more effort to complete the session in a successful manner. Lastly, I have to thank all the participants for their support. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Shall we close the session, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.